Hi, everybody. We're going to do the last section in polynomials before the checkpoint. And this is Z.10 in Algebra 1 IXL, which is multiplying polynomials. I didn't preview it, so I'm hoping that it's going to be fun. Let's see how we're going to start this out. So we've got some binomials here, and this is a special case. This is an a minus b times a plus b, which is going to be a difference of squares. We know that because the two middle terms are going to cancel out. Here's what's going to happen. We take 4f, sorry, it's a little funky looking, minus 3 times 4f plus 3. And just notice that we've got a negative 12f and a positive 12f as our two middle terms. Our first and last terms, our first terms, multiply out and give us 16f squared. And our last terms multiply out and give us minus 9. Our middle terms are negative 12f and positive 12f. And they cancel out, give us 0, so we get a difference of squares. It's just that special case that we did already. 16f squared. If you didn't do the Z8, that's what this one is for. And, oh, I missed my subtraction, didn't I? Try again. Minus, oh, it still didn't go. What's wrong with it? Minus, there we go. Right there, looks good. Got to space that out, otherwise it thinks you're multiplying them. Okay, this time we finally got a trinomial, and we have to distribute this monomial to each of the terms. So we always, this is just distribution. We're going to multiply negative 4m times all three parts. And a lot of people think of this as distribution. And there you go. We have negative 4m cubed. And I'm just going to type it in. Let me get rid of the dot. We've got a negative 4. Oh, said negative. My negative key gets covered up sometimes. 4m squared, cubed. Said cubed. So we multiplied negative 4m times m squared, and we get negative 4m cubed. Then we multiply negative 4m times 2m, and we get minus 8m. And then we multiply negative 4m. You know what? I keep messing this up. I think I better write it. Probably a better idea anyway. Negative 4m cubed, because I'm taking 1m times 2 more m's here. Then I'm going to have minus 8m squared, because I have 1m here times another m there, which gives me m squared, minus 8m. It's a lot easier to just copy your answer once it's already written. And we have a minus 8m, and we're done. Really easy to make a mistake if you don't write it. All right, we're going to distribute this. I'm going to go ahead and write it out. Now, I may not continue writing if it's just a monomial. We're multiplying and multiplying. That is negative 9d squared. Notice it's 3 times 3 is 9. And negative 3 times negative 4 is a positive 12. Like I said, really easy to make a mistake on these. Negative 9d squared and plus 12. All right, what's next? Okay, here we go. Now there's lots of methods for this, but my favorite is distribution. Now, if I could, I would give you 2 different colors, but I can't. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over and under. So I'm going to multiply my 3w minus 3 times all the terms in the top. And then I'm going to multiply my negative 3 times all the terms in the bottom. Now, what really gets confusing is when you have a trinomial times a trinomial, because you're going to have 9 multiplications. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and distribute my 3w to all three terms and multiply them all out. Now, a lot of people like to write it over here. I like to write it underneath so I have more space, but it doesn't matter. I usually prefer underneath. So I have negative 3w cubed. 3w times negative w is negative 3w squared. And we have a 3w times the negative 4. I should have drawn them as I did them. Negative 12w. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply the negative 3 times all three terms. I'm going to multiply it by the negative w squared, which gives me plus 3w squared. See that negative 3 times that negative w. Then I'm going to multiply it negative 3 times negative w, which gives me plus 3w. And you'll notice how I'm lining these up. And finally, I'm going to multiply the negative 3 times the negative 4, which gives me plus 12. And then I'm going to add the like terms. That's going to be negative 3w cubed. Negative 3w squared plus 3w squared is 0. Be careful. I have a minus 9w plus 12. And I ended up with a nice trinomial. But it's a third degree. So let me make that negative just a little bigger. There we go. So I have a negative 3w cubed. And I have a, darn it, I can't see it anymore. I know what it is, but I still want to, darn it. I have a minus 9w. And I have a plus 12. Next time I'm going to write it a little higher so we can see it while I'm working. So next time I'll write it up here on the right so you can see what I'm writing down. All right, let's see what we got this time. Well, this is just a regular binomial multiplication. Now, I know most of you use FOIL acronym, and I don't like it because what we're going to go to is we're going to be doing factoring in the next section. And when you do factoring, you're going to find that stacking is so much easier. So I'm going to go ahead and do the FOIL first. That's going to be 8u squared minus 4u plus 8u minus 4. And you'll notice I multiplied the firsts, the outer pair, the inner pair, and the last pair, of course. That's going to give you 8u squared plus 4u minus 4. Now, my preference and what you really need to practice, if you haven't done this in the other sections, you need to go back to the binomials. You need way more practice than they've given you. They only gave you about 30 multiplications, and hopefully you're going to do even more than that. 4u plus 4 times 2u minus 1. And the way that I multiply these is that I multiply the 8u times the 2u, which is 8u squared, and I multiply the two inner terms and add them at the same time. So I multiply the 4u, 4 times 2u is 8u, minus 4u is 4u. Then I multiply the last, which is minus 4. Now, you're going to see that they're closer together and easier to see the middle terms multiplying out. And you need to practice adding them in your head. Very important. Instead of writing them out like I did over here, it is much better to cross multiply them and sort of cross multiply them and add them together in your head. So we get 8u squared plus 4u minus, darn it, I'm always afraid of those spaces. They don't like it if I don't space out my subtraction. Okay, this is a monomial times a monomial, and it is really easy to make a mistake on this. Now, if you haven't done the sections on exponents like I haven't, you want to know why you're adding exponents. Don't be happy with just memorizing that you're adding exponents. You need to just think about why it is that if I take 9h to the fourth and multiply it by negative h squared, why do I get h to the sixth power? Well, a lot of people will say, well, I'm multiplying, so the reason is because I add exponents when I multiply. No, it isn't. That is not the reason that you add exponents. The reason you add exponents is because this says I have h times h times h times h 4 times. And this says I literally have -1 times h. There are 6 h's here. And the reason that you add exponents is because we are counting. An exponential is a count of how many you have. And when you want to know how many plus how many, it's when you're listing how many there are. So -9h to the sixth power, there are 6 of them. I know it doesn't seem like there's a big difference between memorizing it and knowing why it works, but it's night and day the difference in how well you'll understand it. So it's -9 h raised to the sixth power. Memorizing rules will never work. There are too many, and they overlap, and there's just too much to do. Very common mistake is to want to distribute the square to both parts. You cannot distribute exponents over addition or subtraction. You can distribute exponents over multiplication, and that's where the rule memorization comes in. This means for j minus 2 times 4j minus 2. That's what this means. And of course, if I multiply that, I get 16j squared. My middle terms are going to be minus 8j and a minus 8j. When you add those two together, you get minus 16j. And my last term, notice, and this is my first terms, my last terms give me -2 times -2, which is +4. This is called a perfect square trinomial. That's what this thing is called. And memorizing how the structure of a perfect square trinomial is really important. We always get a positive at the end, and we always get double the product for our middle term. And of course, we get a perfect square to start with. So there it is. 16j squared minus 16j plus 4. Okay, this is an a squared minus b squared situation. We have d squared minus 4. The middle terms cancel out. We like that. D squared minus 4. Oh, I did it again. Sometimes it doesn't go down. There we go. Have to go to my lower level. There we go. Now we're distributing the 2n squared. I'm going to go ahead and just type in the answer. Get rid of this. Minus 8n raised to the fourth power. And then I get plus 8n squared, don't I? That's it. This one is a FOIL situation, but don't use the FOIL acronym. Again, think about stacking them. You might like that better, but even if they're written like that, you can still hopefully multiply the outer pair and get the 16u and the inner pair and get the minus 6u and add that together in your head. So the part that I'm doing in my head is this. I'm understanding that the first pair is going to give me my 8u squared. That's not a problem. My last pair multiplied together is going to give me my negative 12. Now the inners are going to give me minus 6u. Here's the inner pair. And the outer is going to be plus 16. So in my head, I'm adding the 16u and subtracting the 6u. And I do this in my head. The reason it's important that you do it in your head is so that you can factor. You don't know why you need to factor yet, but I absolutely guarantee that you are going to be a lot happier if you know how to factor trinomials. By factoring, what I mean is we're going to start with the answer, which in this case is 8u squared plus 10u minus 12. Oh, I got to separate these. Sometimes it counts it, sometimes it doesn't. There we go. All right. What's going to happen is you're going to be given this answer right here. They're going to give you this in the next section, the AA section, 10u minus 12. And they're going to ask you, you're not going to see those you don't see. And what they're going to ask you is they're going to ask you, how did you get this from two binomials? And they're going to ask you to factor it. Factoring involves, it's a much harder process than multiplying. But if you practice your multiplication, like I told you, in your head, and you don't write it out, and you start writing it out by adding it in your head and multiplying it in your head, you'll be able to do the factoring. Otherwise, you won't be able to. So please take my advice. Practice doing them in your head. And this one I'm just going to distribute. We have a minus 16 z squared, of course. And we have a minus, all I got to do is push it slower, I guess, 4z it looks like. And we have a plus 12 at the end. There we go. Now we're squaring. Be careful. You cannot distribute squares over addition, only over multiplication. And we'll talk about why that's true. If you go back to the exponent section, when I finally get around to doing them, I'll explain why you can distribute squares over multiplication. Anyway, one rule that you can memorize or you can try to remember is that when you square binomials, you always get a middle term. And remember, the middle term is always going to be double the product of the 9z and the 9z. So my middle term is going to be the 18z, isn't it? So we have 9z squared plus 18z for our middle term plus the 9 at the end. Come on. Oh, there's the problem. I wasn't spacing it. There we go. All right. I finally got another binomial times a trinomial. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and distribute the 2n to all three terms. Now normally I wouldn't normally do this, but I'll do it for you. 2n minus 3 is being multiplied by n squared minus 2n plus 3. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and write it over here so that I have a little more space. Now I'm going to multiply the 2n times all three terms. 2n times n squared is 2n cubed. 2n times minus 2n is minus 4n squared. And 2n times positive 3 is plus 6n. Now what I did is the rule is you have to multiply every term by every other term. So what I haven't done is I haven't multiplied my negative 3's times all the terms. And I multiply the negative 3 times the n squared I multiply the negative 3 times the 2n, and I multiply the negative 3 times the positive 3, and that's going to be minus. I'll just write it minus. I sometimes put a plus and negative, but that's just minus. And you'll notice that I like to structure it like this so that I'm adding like terms up. It just makes it so much nicer, especially when you get to the point where you're adding or multiplying a trinomial times a trinomial, or even bigger. They can get really, really ugly and complicated. And you want to line them up. So we have a 2n cubed minus 7n squared plus 12n minus 9. We're just adding like terms. That's all. Let me get rid of this. We have a 2n cubed. We have a minus 7n squared. Darn it. We have a plus 12n and a minus 9. There it is. I like those. Those are the most fun. Okay, this is a monomial times a monomial, which always gives you a monomial. Be careful. Think about why it is that we have to add the exponents. Don't just be happy with saying, oh, I'm multiplying, so I add the exponents. Anyway, enough said about that. Hopefully, negative 8g raised to the 4g's multiplied together and 3g's multiplied together makes 7g's multiplied together. Oh, don't distribute that square. We end up with a middle term. Whenever you square a binomial, you always get a middle term. It's always double the product. That is 9q squared. My middle term is going to be double the product. The product is negative 2 times 3q, which is going to be negative 6q. But I get 2 of those, so I have minus 12q. It's important, and to space this out, it's important that you recognize what's happening with the pattern. Patterns are important. And the plus 4 is the end. Because a negative 2 times a negative 2 is a positive 4. Okay, this is a perfect square, isn't it? And we can see it written out this time. We've got a 4y squared. And in the middle, we've got the negative 12y. So in this case, we can actually see it, can't we? And at the end, we've got a plus 6. That is a perfect square trinomial. Oh, no, it's not. What's wrong with me? Oh, they wanted to trick me. Okay, so it's a minus 6y minus 4y. I can't see very well. It looked like that was a 3 over there, but it's not. It's a 2. So it looks like we've got a minus 10y. Sorry, guys. Almost messed that up. 10y in the middle term. I'm multiplying and adding at the same time. So I'm multiplying the negative 3 times a 2y. That's a negative 6y. And I'm multiplying the outer term, which is negative 4y, and I'm adding them together. My eyesight isn't what it was. Plus 6 for the end. Man, I almost messed that up. That would have been unfortunate. All right. Distribute. I'm just going to distribute. I get 6n cubed. Oh, no space. I gotta go down to the next level. Come on. There we go. We have a plus 8n squared. And then we get a plus 6n. All I did was distribute the 2n times each part. 1, 2, 3. And there we go. Distribute. Only 2 parts this time. Negative 24 n squared plus 48, huh? And And oh boy, we get another multiplication. I really like these. I recommend you pause it if you're still sticking with me all this time. I can't imagine, but it could happen, I suppose. And I'm going to rewrite it and do it all out for you, but I'd like you to do it yourself. So 4g minus 2, I'll try and write it a little neater than I have in the past, negative 2g squared minus 3, that's a square, g plus 1. I'm going to distribute my 4g times each of the terms. That's negative 8g to the third minus 12g squared plus 4g. There we go. A little neater. Now I'm going to multiply my negative 2 times all three terms. And I get a plus 4g squared. We get a plus 6g. And we get a minus 2. And we add up together our like terms. Negative 8g cubed minus 8g squared plus 10g minus 2. Here's where a lot of students mess up because they add these together, but then they also want to add their exponents. Be careful. When you're putting things together, you don't change the exponents, only when you're multiplying, okay? So anyway, let's go ahead and put in our answer. See how quickly I can get this in. Negative 8g to the third minus 8g squared plus 10g and minus 2. Looks good. Okay, let's see what we got here. Oh, we get to multiply an area. Notice that I have a diagram and it's labeled. A good idea is to follow 5 steps. We have a labeled diagram, and our next step is to write a formula. The formula for this one is either base times height or length times width. It's a rectangle, so the area is equal to length times width. And then we substitute. The length is 8, and I like to substitute inside parentheses. And then we simplify, and that's going to be 24x, isn't it? Now, if they had given me an area value instead of just an area, I would have been able to solve this as the last step. Anyway, it's just 24x. I'm sure most of you are aware that you just multiply, the length times the width to get the area. Now this time, if you haven't seen my other part of the video, imagine taking this triangle right here and putting it right here. And what you end up with is a nice rectangle where this distance right here is the same as this distance right here, which is x plus 7. So clearly, when you multiply when you find the area of a parallelogram, you're really taking the area of the rectangle, base times height. So anyway, there it is. Base times height is going to give me, and it's going to be the area is base times height. The base is x plus 7. The height is x plus 6. And one more time, I highly recommend that you don't write out the FOIL. Multiply it in your head. You get your x squared. You add the 6 and the 7 in your head, you get your 13x. And you multiply the 7 times the 6 and get the 42. The reason you multiply in your head is so that you can undo the process and factor, which is coming soon. Coming soon to a theater near you. X squared plus 13x plus 42. And there we go. Okay, guys, we're almost done. Now, this one is a little different situation. And If you'd like to see it, it's kind of cool. The proof is that you draw a rectangle that looks like this. Hopefully everybody can see it. Sorry, it's kind of funky looking, but take a look. Doesn't that green one over here make half of this rectangle on the right? And notice that the green one is half of the rectangle on the left, and that rectangle happens to be 3x plus 2 times 2x plus 2. Well, the triangle is half of the rectangle. And so the area of a triangle is 1/2 base times height. Knowing why things work is really important. Some people like to have the 0.5 instead of the 1/2. It doesn't matter, it's interchangeable. I like fractions better than decimals and you'll see why if you take a look at that section. 2x plus 2, and we're multiplying by the height, which is 3x plus 2. Now, this is where a little bit of, you want to be, you want to think ahead a little bit. Now, I could multiply these all out and get a trinomial and then distribute the 1/2 to all the terms. But what I could do to make it easier, if I can just be a little bit more thoughtful, is to multiply the 1/2 times the 2x plus 2. Creativity in math is not usually stressed that much, but I can be a little more creative and multiply these two together first. And of course, we're supposed to multiply left to right anyway. So this gives me x plus 1 times 3x plus 2. Isn't that nice? Much easier multiplication all the way around. So I'm being a little creative by multiplying out my 1/2 first. And of course, now I can multiply them and I get my 3x squared. 3x and 2x is 5x plus 2. Hopefully all that's clear. 3x squared. We get a plus 5x in the middle, plus 2 at the end. And there it is. This one is just going to multiply my base times my height, and we get 3x squared plus 3x. That's all. Distribute. This one's going to be 1/2 the base times the height. So instead of multiplying by 8, I'm going to multiply by 4. I'll go ahead and write it for you. This is area of a triangle is 1/2 base times height. That's 1/2 times 8 times 2x plus 4. A common mistake is to want to take half the base and half the height. And the problem with doing that is that you will get 1/4 of the triangle because you don't want to take half of half. You only want to multiply by a half one time. That's going to give you 4 times the 2x plus 4, which is 8x plus 16. There you go. And this one is just going to be 6x plus 18. I'm just making sure I'm actually looking at the area, not the perimeter. And we're getting there, a couple more. Okay, this one is just 8x, isn't it? Multiply the base times the height. And this one is the area. We're squaring x plus 5. Hopefully you know the pattern. It's x squared. Our middle term is double the product, plus 10x. And the last term is the 25, isn't it? Erase these so you can see them better. There's my square. And we have one last one, and then we're done. 1/2 base times height. So I'll write it out one last time. Area of a triangle is 1/2 base times height. Remember, we're not taking half of both. We're only taking half of one of them. Half cancels out the 2 if you like. We get x times 2x plus 5, which of course is 2x squared plus 5x. And I hope you guys will do yours and finish up and get your mastery. And I'll see you back again. Bye, guys.